All right, recording. Awesome. All right. Hey, what's going on, everyone? Justin Smith here with Integrative Health Supplements, Integrative Health Chats, and I'm joined by, again, the one and only Dr. Phil Slonkosky. Dr. Phil, how are you?
Hey, Justin, I'm doing great. It's
Uh,
another good day.
Today's a great day. I agree with that.
hmm
It's like, what, 7 days away from Christmas?
Gosh, is it? Yeah, I guess so.
Insane. So, for those that are celebrating the holiday of Christmas, I know we wish you a Merry Christmas, but I do want to say if Santa's watching, Dr. Phil, you have been an awesome human being. So I hope whatever he has coming down your chimney, I hope he brings you some good joy and gifts.
Yeah, if only Santa could make supplements, right?
Yes, that would be amazing, Dr. Phil.
It would be amazing. They'd be good for you and taste amazing.
Yes, they probably bring you more value than presents, than like toys and gift and stuff. So, all right, but Phil, I know you're busy, man, as a lot of us are, and I, as always, appreciate you taking time out of your day away from patients to sit down and have Wellness Wednesday conversation with us. So today, I wanted to dive into this whole idea of the endocannabinoid system and then the gut microbiome, the relation between the two, because something that we're definitely striving for at Integrative Health Supplements is we are not just another CBD company. So we're really diving into this whole gut health. So I would love for you to make the connection between CBD and the microbiome, if you could.
It's a great question, Justin. I mean, and we've talked about this, right? And I think it's probably a good time to get people to start thinking about it, because the gut brain is something that's been talked about for a long time. But I think because people are just now kind of becoming aware of how important the gut is, how important the microbes are in your gut. Now people are willing to say, okay, I'm understanding that. Now I'm open to this idea that the brain and the gut are actually connected. And there's a debate whether or not, where is the first brain? Is the first brain actually the gut, or is the gut the second brain? Now, what do I mean by that? So what they have discovered as they've continued to learn more and more about the gut and the digestive system is that we actually have the majority of endocrine cells and cells that make neurotransmitters are located in our gut. So if you take your gut, for example, and you spread it out, you've got this 25, 30-foot long tube with the surface area, an unbelievable surface area. Let's just put it that way.
Are you referring to our intestines? What are you referring to there?
I guess you could be referring to like the stomach on down, like the small bowel, and like if you took all the stuff that makes up your gut.
All right.
And you were to take all the, remember it folds and turns. If you took all of that, opened it up and spread it out over the course, you'd have a large surface area. When you look at the cells in there that are responsible for making different chemicals that help the body operate, specifically those that help our brain operate, what are called neurotransmitters. It depends on what you read, but 70 to 80% of those are made in that area, not in your brain. So when you think about that from a certain standpoint, it's quite overwhelming, right? But on, like, how is it that if, we tend to think of ourselves as being very compartmentalized, right? The brain takes care of the brain, the liver takes care of the liver, the heart takes care of the heart. But if there's one thing that I think the endocannabinoid system continues to demonstrate is that everything is interconnected. That you have to think of yourself as being a completely interrelational being, both within how your body operates, but more importantly, with how you relate with your microbiome. Because as we've talked about before, if you add up the number of cells for the different types of bacteria, fungi, and viruses, and all the other organisms, it doesn't even compare. Like, there is far more of those organisms and cells than the amount of cells in your body. So
Wow.
you literally are more of a walking symbiotic being than you are specifically human. So it's
almost difficult to like think about. Like
oh,
yeah,
absolutely.
it's challenging. That's for sure.
I think of when I took anatomy class and you get to understand, the human body. And I had an opportunity to TA that for a few years after that. So, I mean, I had the honor of working on a number of bodies and understanding anatomy in a very cool and intimate way. And then to take a step back and say, wow, here's the human body and all of its complete complexity, of which we are continuing to understand more and more and then all of a sudden throw on top of it that, yeah, well, that's really cool and neat, but you know what? The microbes that live on there, there's more cells in terms of count of microbes, and how those microbes digest food and interact with one another actually affects how your anatomy works, how the cells actually transmit. And that, in reality, how those microbes work is actually more important to a degree than what we think now is. I mean, that took me a while to figure out. And, as my own clinical practice has kind of changed in trying to understand it as applies dentistry, I think it makes total sense. And I mean, you're seeing testimonies and anecdotes and more people coming forth saying this, this is the new paradigm. So anyway, in terms of how the brain and gut relate together, that's probably one of the key ways. The other way is through how the nervous system interacts, right? You have this nerve called the vagus nerve. It's one of the 12 cranial nerves, and vagus means the wanderer, and it connects to everything as it goes down. And, that nerve is central to how so many different things work. But what gets interesting is how the body kind of feeds back from the brain to the gut. It's a fascinating communication system. But I think the main takeaway, without getting too scientific, is basically that your brain and your gut are intimately related. They talk to each other in ways that none of us really understand, other than just know that they are related.
Yeah.
Intimately. So that the foods that we eat feed back to the brain, and the brain can actually have cravings that make us want to eat certain things. And now what gets really interesting,
for instance, the reason for like sugar addiction.
Right.
Yeah. I know we could go off on a tangent on that, but that just sprung into my head.
Absolutely. Well, it's, all you have to do is take a look at how many ingredients, how many things in a grocery store have sugar in them to know that, frankly, the majority of processed foods, and even some, quote, organic foods, they might have organic cane sugar or other types of sugars in there, but sugars are everywhere. And why is that? Because essentially you can make the argument that we're addicted to it, that sometimes we won't eat certain foods unless there's a certain palatable nature to them that's derived from the sugar. But that's a different discussion for a different day. So what they're finding, right? So first off, when people are taking CBD and it's engaging their endocannabinoid system, and it's not, yes, the CBD in part does that, but the different terpenes and other types of cannabinoids, when they're engaging your endocannabinoid system, what's happening is you're decreasing, you're driving towards homeostasis and balance, and you're overall decreasing some inflammation. And what they're finding is that when you decrease inflammation in the body, you start getting a change in how the gut is, because the gut responds to inflammation. And the different microbes that grow on there are growing in response to inflammation, but are growing in response to things you're eating. And it's one big cycle that's interrelated. So when you start driving the body towards homeostasis and start driving it towards balance, the bacteria are going to respond to that in a beneficial way. And so there's interesting research papers out there showing how you're getting beneficial bacterial growth in your gut from engaging the endocannabinoid system. So it's interesting. I think we're going to find that as time goes on, there's going to be, some more definitive research on it. Probably, I haven't come across any like real serious human studies on this, but I think what we're learning more and more is that all these systems, all these things that we're finding, like the body knows how to heal itself and knows how to balance it. It's inflammation that gets in the way. Yeah. And when you decrease inflammation, then the body's able to go more towards homeostasis and find more of that balance. The question is, what do you need to do to get the inflammation out of the way? And what do you need to do to get rid of all the free radicals, and like the detox and so forth? Like that's at least how I see it in my head.
Yeah. I mean, I think about the body as like a machine. And if it's not well oiled, certain parts, like in a car, pistons won't move if you don't get your oil change. Inflammation, the lack of something. So too much of something can cause problems as too little of something. So maybe you can explain too the idea of good and bad bacteria. I know this may go off a different course here, but I know we need both. But does CBD play into that good and bad at all?
Well, so CBD doesn't interact with any specific type of bacteria. CBD and the quantities of the oil, interestingly enough, maybe certain bacteria might grow beneficially because of the oil that's in there. There might be something that as it breaks it down, certain strains. I haven't read anything on that.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it seems that the oil would only be beneficial because of its, if you look at where it's derived from or whatever, it's almost like a food in a way, right? If you, in leafy greens or something that we all need more of in our diet. So in essence, you're getting rid of the, when you just take a broad spectrum hemp oil from a hemp plant with a little bit of added maybe grapeseed oil or something, you're kind of skipping the fiber content or the cellular content of the plant, but you're kind of going right to some of the juice. I'm sure there's probably something there, but the big thing that people have to understand is we've been taught to live in a very sterile society, right? During cold and flu season, everyone's hitting the dispenser with the alcohol and cleaning their hands. Our bodies are made up of bacteria, viruses, fungi, protozoa, all sorts of stuff. And there's the vast majority of the bacterial species are our friends. And even the ones that quote are bad are actually our friends at certain concentrations, because it requires a higher concentration of the good guys to keep these bad guys under control. And if you didn't have the bad guys, you might have an overgrowth of the good guys that then could turn bad at a higher concentration. I mean, it is ridiculously complex, and it's amazing. Sometimes the more that I learn about this, I think, how is it that we're even still alive? Right? I mean,
no, definitely. Or how does everything just work the way it works?
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, it really is.
Because I just see increasing complexity, right? As soon as we kind of figure something out, it's like, well, it's actually more increasingly complex.
Yeah. What about this? What about, how does it relate to this or that? Yeah, definitely.
So what people have to realize is that we exist with bacteria, and bacteria are responsible for our health actually being what it is. And we have to learn how to take care of the bacteria. We're also a high percentage of fungi. And I'm sure at some point we're going to know, hey, here's how you take care of your fungi. I mean, outside of doing things, if candida gets out of control, you've got a problem. So you've got to know how to keep your candida under control, right? That's taking care of your fungi. There's more viruses than we really could ever imagine in us. And I don't know anything about that other than doing what I can to keep the bad guys from overcoming. But, people have to realize that bacteria is our friend, and we have to try to make sure that how we live our life helps promote the good bacteria to help keep the bad guys out. Because if we kind of, and I think that's where we have to kind of look at, hey, how does things exist in nature, right?
Yeah. I mean, to your point, so actually real quick. So if I hear you correctly, like cold and flu is a type of virus, right? Or correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And so you're saying that if you have an unhealthy gut, you're more prone to catching a cold or a flu because things are just out of whack?
Oh, absolutely. Right. So if you have higher states of inflammation, okay, that means your body is having to work harder to control, like your immune system is being mitigated to help control that inflammation. Okay. So we only have a limited amount of resources from an immune response, right? So you have your army, you have a limited army to work with. If you're in a state of high inflammation and just overall just not quote healthy, that means your immune system is so busy working over here that when this virus comes in and starts doing its thing, there's not enough soldiers over here to go kill that virus.
Okay. No, that makes sense.
So that's how people, so again, higher rates of inflammation, higher rates of toxicity means that your body is having to work twice as hard to try and cleanse itself, thereby creating more opportunities for other viruses and bacteria and so forth to get out of whack, because you just don't have the resources to attack it and identify it.
So then on the flip side of that too, when you're talking about inflammation, so from your experience, if somebody is using CBD, reducing inflammation, it kind of, in a way, as long as you're taking care of your gut, eating well, maybe taking a great probiotic, the chances of catching the flu or a cold are minimized because of less inflammation.
Hypothetically, I mean, that's how it should work for anyone, that if they're taking care of themselves, that should decrease the opportunity for those viruses and stuff to get in there. There's no specific research paper that talks about the question you just asked. And I think this is the part that gets tricky, right? When people have conversations about things like this. There's a lot of medicine, especially in alternative medicine, that's practiced by more anecdotal and practice, like right through practice and anecdotes, case studies.
Mm-hmm.
There aren't these like clinically controlled environments where, because there'd be some ethics against that, right? Like, we're going to let you get sick and we're going to give you something that can keep you from getting sick, I mean, there can be a problem with that ethically, right?
Yeah, I agree.
But I think that if you look at people who have not been sick for a long period of time, right? I mean, here's the question, right? If our body, if living in our body right now is more viruses, like trillions of viruses, okay? And it's one flu virus that gets this person, like everyone gets exposed to the flu. And whether or not, some people get vaccinated and still get sick. So I'm not going to talk about if you're vaccinated or not. But why is it that in some people they get the flu and others they don't? Given the fact that that one virus out of all the different viruses that are existing within us just so happen to do it. And I think the answer in my head is the fact that it just means our immune system is ridiculously incredible because it's able to keep in balance probably trillions of different, I mean, the combinations of what it attacks is probably a number that we can't even comprehend.
Yeah.
So when you're already working at that high of a level, if your body's suppressed, the window of opportunity for some sort of infection or virus to take hold is probably going to be pretty high, right? Because you're already working at kind of like your max. And then when you get suppressed, you're down here. So you've already got stuff sitting in like
just waiting. Yeah, like on standby. Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Cause the reason I guess I asked that question and not just coming from me, but just from people that I've been speaking with, when they're, let's say they do catch a flu or the cold, I've had conversations where they've actually increased their CBD dosage per day instead of using maybe like a cold and flu medicine. And they have reported, I would say, a better result. And so I was just curious from your standpoint, more from a medical perspective, that what your thoughts were. But you answered that perfectly, and I think it makes sense.
We'll put it this way: there's nothing in a pure hemp oil extract that's going to be a problem for somebody taking a cold.
Okay, no, that's
really. I mean, awesome. I think as far as I know, yeah, because I'm thinking I don't know if I don't have any answer in terms of whether or not if it had THC or not, if that would affect things. People use essential oils all the time when they're sick.
They swear by. Yeah, I mean,
there's a lot of people
we work with a lot of people that are into the essential oils, and they swear by them. I've used them. Actually, I have some on my desk right here. So
I would definitely see it as a support adjunct. Again, the crazy thing in all of this is that sometimes we don't even know how certain mechanisms work. Like there's been medicines that we've used for decades that they kind of think they know how they work in medicine, but then they find out more and more like, here's what it is. The biggest thing that people just have to do is recognize that sometimes trial and error for these things, like if it's not going to do any harm, try it. And if you want to use it with Energetic, great. I mean, we're not talking about things here for the most part that cross interact, that are cross toxic. And that's where, again, if you have a specific question about it, those are good questions to ask for your doctor. Like, hey, here's what I'm thinking. Like, can I do this with that and see how it works? I mean, there's lots of different things that I've tried, that I've looked up and found out, hey, here's how this works here. That, they're not going to interact with each other. Let's give it a try and see. I mean, what's the harm it's going to do? So you just got to make sure you educate yourself and take that into account. I mean,
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we exist in the first place as a company, as a group of people trying to have those conversations, connecting the dots. I mean, a lot of people out there are starting to ask a lot of different questions about their health. I'm not saying don't go to a doctor, but we're talking to a lot of people that are shying away from the Western medicine. So these types of conversations are important, and are very valid.
Yeah,
we're just sharing.
The question really boils down to, for each person, like what things are what things are taxing your immune system?
Yeah.
How can you prioritize your life and look at what is taxing your immune system and causing chronic inflammation in your life? That's what it boils down to. Stress is probably one of the biggest ones that starts to, when you're stressed, when you're angry, you can suppress your immune system for like 24 hours. I mean, it has a dramatic effect on how your immune system is able to fight. It also weakens out that thin lining of the gut, allowing, the permeability and that leaky gut to kind of become worse for most of us, because most of us do have some form of bacterial dysbiosis, and that's at the root of a lot of our inflammation. So, I mean, those are the questions we got to start asking, I think, more and more is, okay, like what is what I'm exposing myself to going to help my immune system? Is it going to build it up? Is it going to hurt it? Is it going to increase my inflammatory load, or is it going to decrease it? The foods that we eat, the things we get exposed to. I mean, that's, in essence, those are the secrets, I believe, to living a healthier life.
I love it, Dr. Phil. Well, thank you so much. Any last comments on that? I do have one more question before we shake hands, part ways here.
No, man. What's the last question you have?
All right. So we're going on our third week of Wellness Wednesday. The first week we talked about a health tip of minimizing the use of sugar. And then last week we talked about maybe journaling, some wellness, your food intake, your exercise intake, maybe just your overall mindset. So today, what is something that you can share with our listeners where they can apply something immediately to help them live better?
I would encourage, in light of what we talked about today, I would encourage people to actually have conversations about their health with someone who can start to hold them accountable.
Oh.
The only way that we're going to change ourselves is if we have accountability partners. There's very few people who can actually do this stuff by themselves. You have to have somebody that you can talk to, who can hold you accountable to try and achieve the goal that you want to achieve. I think, and I think that many of us are afraid to have conversations, because when we have conversations, we begin to own our own condition. And because when we verbalize things, we make them concrete, we make them tangible in a way that, before they're immaterial thoughts in our heads, but when we speak them, they become concrete because we have just, shared that. All right. So that becomes a shared experience with that person. And now I have to, in a sense, own it. And
vulnerability, transparency, openness, all that. Keep going. Sorry.
No, awesome, man. I mean, that's exactly right. And when you enter into that is the first step in what will eventually get you to a healthier life, because one way or another, you have to face the reality of that if you are unhealthy, and that, because our bodies know. It's just whether or not we can see with our own mind and overcome the emotional fear that we have, because sometimes we don't have the solutions, or we're afraid for the solutions. I think there's a path for everybody, but it begins with, I think, talking about it. So I would just encourage people, last week it was, hey, write it down. That makes it concrete. But I think as a whole, we just need to have one big, real conversation. And the more that people start talking, I genuinely believe that our bodies will direct us to what the truth is. And if we can have those conversations and people can feel encouraged, the momentum of that will be extraordinary.
Wow. Yeah, that is a powerful takeaway there. I'm not even going to follow up with that. That was great. I 100% agree with you. And yeah, Phil, thank you.
No, you're welcome.
Yeah. So as
this
always,
is what we've been talking about. This is,
I agree.
This is I've been talking about, and what all of us have been talking about. So it's I appreciate, I think for people who are listening, hopefully they can take something away from that, and we can continue. I would just encourage people who do watch this, post question. We want to know what you're talking about. We want to know what's on your mind, because we want to engage this great big conversation of seeing how we can challenge ourselves to find out ways that we can become better.
I love it, Dr. Phil. Thank you so much for.
Thank you, Justin.
Yeah, thanks. You're welcome, but thank you. So, as always, Dr. Phil, thank you so much for your time, and I hope everyone listening has a great rest of your week. Happy holidays, and we'll talk soon.
Take care.